Look, I think we were absolutely given the information that we could have at that time. It was a quick-moving process.
And would you say that that information was accurate then or is more accurate now?
I would say that after having a conversation with the president, you don't get much more accurate than that.
Welcome back to the 11th hour. The question of whether the White House press corps and as a result the American people can trust the word of those who work for the president, stand at that podium, came up in today's press briefing. Here is more of that exchange between Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders and CBS News correspondent Major Garrett.
Should reporters and the country essentially wait for a pronouncement from the president before believing that which is stated on his behalf by the White House communications staff?
Look, Major, I'm not going to get into back and forth that we have to have like a direct quote every single time. You guys want to get lost in the process.
I don't believe asking you a question and getting an answer is lost in the process, okay. Sarah, with all respect.
Yeah, and I'm answering those questions. It's very simple. The president decided to fire Director Comey. Nobody else gets to make that decision, and he made it. He stands by it, as do the rest of us.
Let's bring in our guest, former Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, Rick Stengel, who also happens to be former managing editor of Time magazine, and our friend, historian, presidential biographer, and Pulitzer Prize-winning author Jon Meacham comes back on the broadcast with us. Gentlemen, welcome back to both of you. Jon, I'll begin with you. Major Garrett is a good guy and a solid journalist and was not being facetious when he said, do we have to wait for the president's pronouncement? You and I have talked before about this president who lacks a baseline of history in the presidency that politicians with their eyes on this prize all their lives have. It's nobody's fault. He came from a different world. Is that also, does that translate into not knowing that there are certain rules, mores, and laws that sometimes govern your comments?
Well, President Trump is, like all of us to some extent, a prisoner of his own experience. This is a man who, it's been reported, actually pretended to be his own spokesman in the tabloid years in New York.
Yeah.
John Miller and John Barron. And so I think when the history of the Trump administration is written, there are going to be a couple of really important historical figures who are antecedents here. One is Roy Cohn, who was Joe McCarthy's lawyer and who tutored Trump in the art of changing the story, going for the headline, fighting wars in the tabloids. The other is Rupert Murdoch, who helped create that culture in the modern era in New York. And I think that essentially what we're seeing, and Rick has been in this position when he served the country, there is this, to use an old Watergate phrase, there is this enormous credibility gap. And just one parenthetical, President Trump has explained why he did it, but will that be the explanation tomorrow?
Right. And Rick, the reason why it's important to believe that podium and the person standing behind it is tomorrow's briefing, God forbid, may be about a U.S. military action we have taken overnight overseas. And we may have to detail the satellite evidence that led us to make that decision. It has to be believable, just as every word from that podium has to be believable.
Yes, but I would say that, with all due respect to Major Garrett, the question is a little bit disingenuous in the sense that nobody has the reality the way the president himself has the reality, whether he rearranges it or not. Every time you're up at that podium, you're trying to translate something that you know that's imperfect in a way that at least is plausible and truthful to the people sitting there. I mean, I think somebody mentioned Mike McCurry earlier.
That was me.
Yes, who I think has set the standard for best press secretary. But Mike had that great phrase. Someone said, well, what's your job? And he says, my job is to tell the truth, slowly.
That's right.
And so
Mike was adept at that.
And so some of that is because you know things that you can't say. How can you say things that you know that are truthful and be able to protect your boss, the president, and be able to protect the American people? And that's something when you're in government all the time, you have things that you just can't talk about, but you can't be untruthful either.
Jon Meacham, you have spent time with this president. In the life of presidents, the great thing about being a historian is most of the modern era presidents have had historians in because they're into your line of work and the books you've written, and they've read them and want to discuss them. Without sharing what you can't share about private time with this president, what traits have you reflected back on watching him these past just few days?
Well, I haven't, to be clear, I haven't spoken directly with President Trump, I think, since June or July of last year, so that should be clear. But I think what we see here is he is self-aware in this sense. When I ask him in that series of questions for Rick's alma mater for Time last summer, it was about were there analogous figures in his mind? Were there case studies in his mind about different presidents as he prepared for the presidency? And we ended up talking about Babe Ruth and Lydia Ko, the great Asian-American golfer, because Babe Ruth had been asked, according to Trump, by sports writers in the 30s, hey, Babe, how do you hit the long ball? And Ruth said, I don't know, I just swing at it. And Trump said, I just swing at it. And Lydia Ko had been asked what are her swing thoughts, and she said, I don't know, I just hit the ball. So he at least he was clear with us. There's no Lucy in the football here. He is a gut player. It's instinctive, and he is totally convinced that he can bully his way through almost any situation. And why wouldn't you believe that if you had his life experience and you were the president of the United States?
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.